Corecon's work orders, found in the documentation module, one of the more flexible features that Corecon offers. A work order can be used in a variety of ways. For example, a work order can be used as a daily communication tool for field crews outlining what needs to be performed, or it can be used for a document work directive by the owner. It can also be used to accumulate information that would eventually become a change order. A work order can also be used to accumulate information in preparation for a back charge to a subcontractor. No matter which scenario you choose, both estimated and actual costs can be tracked. Depending on the contract type, wizards are also available to transfer the financial details to a prime contract change order, a subcontract change order, or a prime contract invoice, eliminating duplicate data entry. Also, every actual cost type in Corecon has a reference for the work order field. For example, if we go to HR, to labor time cards, actions, and add a weekly time card, you'll see that there is a field for change orders and for work orders. If Corecon encounters a work order number, that cost will be accumulated for that work order. If it encounters a change order number, it'll do the same. However, if both the change order number and the work order number are left blank, Corecon assumes that the cost is related to the original prime contract cost budget. If we go back out to the procurement module and open a bill, for example, a bill also has a reference for work orders. So as cost entries are made, those cost entries can be tagged to a work order so that later it can be used in finalizing the work order and converting it to another transaction type. Back to documentation and back to work orders. Before we show you how to create a new work order, let's take a look at this graphic. The source of work order line item details can come from a variety of sources. As mentioned, miscellaneous expenses and time card transactions can be tagged to a work order number. Also, from procurement, purchase orders, bills, and sub-invoice items all have the ability to be tagged to a work order number. Estimate items can also be added as line items to a work order. Cost database items, more specifically the labor items, the equipment items, and work items, can also be used on a work order. And finally, committed and cost to date transactions are all sources of information for work order line items. Once the information's been gathered at the work order level, what that work order can become depends on which contract type. If the work order in contract admin with a fixed lump sum contract type, the information can be integrated into a prime change order. That means that both the approved and pending revenue budget will be affected. If the work order is used in contract admin on a cost plus contract type, the work order can be converted into a prime invoice, and in doing so will affect the billings to date. If a work order is used in procurement, and no matter which contract type you use, a work order can be converted to a purchase order, a subcontract, or a subcontract change order, and in each case affect the approved or pending committed cost. There are primarily two ways to add work orders. With a project selected in the documentation module under projects, we'll go down to work orders and go to actions. You can add manually or you can copy a work order. Let's add a new work order manually. And let's select a prime contract that is a cost plus contract type. And we'll give it a subject. And we'll select a type. The work order types can be set up in global settings under Features and under Documentation. These are customizable lists that you'll see as pull-down lists throughout Corecon. Just look for work order type as the custom list. Key contacts will be the customer and the customer contact as issued by, and in this case, our company, and our project manager as issued to. Since this relates to a subcontract, and if it were associated with a specific SCO at this point, you may want to tag that. If you have a drawing that needs to be referenced, we'll add that as well. Location, spec section, and so on. Since this prime contract type is cost plus, this work order may end up becoming a prime invoice or a change order, but could also become a subcontract change order. So we're going to leave the billable status as billable. I'm going to go ahead and mark it approved at this point, but there are other statuses to keep this in, and we'll give it a status date. We're going to set up the cost reviewer. In this case, it'll be Gordon. And we want Gordon to review actual costs. And we'll set the review date as a reminder for Friday. And review comments can be added at that point. Then we'll click Next. And we can start adding items. We can set 2 defaults. And let's start with materials. As we're adding work order items, we can import these from the cost database, from an estimate, from a PO, a bill, a sub-invoice, labor time card, equipment time card, and employee miscellaneous expenses. Let's put together sort of a mini budget for this one. So we're going to go to Import Work Items and filter by a master cost code list. And we'll go to Division 1 and click Filter. And we're just going to add 1 line item. And click Add and Close. Let's also add, for the estimate, from the labor items in the cost database. Add and Close. We may want to update these items so we can get an approximation or estimate. Click Save. And next, we'll do the same for the labor. Click Save. And then we'll toggle to estimated values. For some reason, we needed to send a proposal or an estimate. You may want to jump up to the reports, go to work order details, and default with estimate totals. We'll just print the PDF. Your logo, of course, will appear here. Sort of like a mini quote or proposal specific to this particular work order. Now let's assume for a moment that some time has gone by. It's now time to review. If we switch this to show actual values, and then we go to add import items, one of the options is to import cost to date transactions. So when we pull that in there and we click import, and then click close, we scroll down. Now we can see, it looks like there's some bills. There's some labor time cards. Since we estimated these two, and since we included the time cards, we're going to take those back out. And of course, these will be brought in at cost. We also have an option then to add or import an equipment item. And possibly we did not enter an equipment time card for that. So we're going to charge 6 hours of equipment time and click Add and Close. So now we have a bill that was tagged to the work order, some time cards, and we estimated 6 hours of time for a dozer, and we included that all at cost. We're just accumulating the cost at this point. But again, we could add these from labor time cards, equipment time cards, sub-invoices, bills, and so on. Could come from any of those sources. You may want to attach some linked files by either dragging and dropping or link existing. Let's just include a copy of the vendor bill. We're going to convert this in a moment, but if necessary, you could also print out the default work order with actual totals in detail format. You also can go back to the work order list. You'll see your work order here. If you needed to print a log, go to Reports at the top of this screen. And we'll just select one. We have a lot of options and filters here at the top. You can scroll down and see the work order that we just created. Now, if you recall from our business process diagram, a work order comes from a variety of sources. Once it is a work order, then you can decide which route it'll take. In this case, it was a cost plus contract. So let's convert that work order into a prime invoice. So go back to Projects, to Contract Admin, to Prime Invoices, to Actions, and Add from Work Order. Select Prime Contract 2. Here's the work order. We're using actual, and click Next. Set the terms. I'm going to go ahead and mark it approved, and then click Finish. Now that we've converted the work order into a prime invoice, if we go back to the invoice details, you can see the line items. But remember, we set this up so that the cost and the sell were the same rate. So now we'll want to go in and import our default markups and click Add and Close. And this has been added at the bottom. Back to Prime Invoice Info. Now we can go in and print it. There are quite a few options in printing work orders as prime invoices. We just selected one. Remember that once a work order has been resolved and you've decided where that ends up, make sure to come back and close that work order so it won't be used again. It'll still remain on the logs and in the detail. It'll just not be available to import into a different transaction type. If you'd like to know more about this subject, we encourage you to go to the knowledge base, to leads and projects, down to documentation, and open the knowledge base article on work orders.